Good morning, everyone. We're gonna get things going here in just a second. We've got some people that are still checking in, but I want to introduce myself. My name is George Christie. I'm with Wine Industry Network, and on behalf of our entire team, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your schedules. I know how busy everyone is to be with us today. Before we get started, I want to thank all of our sponsors for all of their support. Without the sponsors stepping up, we wouldn't be able to do things like this. I also want to thank all of our tabletop exhibitors. We've got some really great products and services that are represented out there in the hallway, so definitely go visit them during the breaks. We've got a couple really cool interactive displays out there. TSO Sonoma's got something really cool. The Garden Society, there are a few others, so go visit those guys and pick up some cards. Along with the displays out in the hallway, we've got a terrific lunch that's going to be out there on the grass. I don't know if any of you guys were here last year, but the hotel did a beautiful job. And then at the end of the day, we're going to finish with a little wine tasting, a little networking session. We've got some really great wines that have been donated by some of the local wineries, and of course the hotel's got some really beautiful hors d'oeuvres for you guys to have as well. For those of you that are attending one of our conferences for the first time, we try to do everything we can to make our sessions as interactive as possible. And to do that, we rely on a little bit of technology. We use a program called Slido. And basically what Slido does is it allows you to ask questions with your phone, or if you see a question that someone else has asked that you're also interested in, you can like it. And essentially what that does is just bubbles up the questions that are most important to the audience to the top, and those are the ones that our speakers will address. So, and of course, whenever we do something like this, it's important that we get the conversation started off right. And so selecting that first speaker is a pretty important decision. And for us, when we were thinking about who we wanted, we really had one person in mind. And we were really happy and fortunate that not only was he available, but he was willing to be here with us. Dr. Bill Silver, who I got to know when he was leading the Sonoma State University Wine Business Institute program, which today is really the leading educational program for students that are interested in the business of wine. Bill led that program and just did a terrific job. And then earlier this year, he went over and took on the CEO position at CannaCraft. So again, we were so happy to have Bill here, and you could just join me in welcoming Dr. Bill Silver to the stage to kick off today's conversation.
Thanks, George.
All right, buddy.
Let me set the stage for you, but I'm going to go back a few years. Imagine it's 1980, small New England town. There's a group of teenagers in the basement of a house. Now, I know in California you don't know from basements. They're places you go and have the building collapse on you. But in New England, basements are places that you go to either throw all the stuff that you don't know where else to put it, or where you go where your parents don't know what you're doing. So there's a group of teenagers down in that basement. They are drinking Genesee Cream Ale. Anyone know about Jenny Cream? Yeah. Wild Irish Rose wine. I think it's wine. It doesn't taste like any of the wines I know today. And they were smoking something called Acapulco Gold, which essentially is brown weed. Now, the reason they're in the basement is because you can crack the window open in the basement, even though it's like minus 20 outside, and blow the smoke out the window. That one of these teenagers would be living in a state where they had legalized the recreational use of cannabis would have blown their mind back then. That same teenager would get to run one of the largest cannabis companies in the state wasn't even conceivable. That he would get to keynote a conference on wine and weed, there are no words. Despite the fact that I'm going to speak with you for a few minutes here, there are no words to describe what is happening right now. And it's an honor for me to be here, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to some of the things I have to say. I want to share just a little bit about what it's like to be on the front line of this industry that is cannabis, and also to share my experiences at the Wine Business Institute at Sonoma State University. A few years ago, when I was in graduate school in Seattle, I got to see a presentation by Warren Miller, who makes ski movies. And he got up in front of the room and said, "I've got the greatest job in the world." And and he did, I think. I mean, he had a great job. He went around all over the place. And this is really before there were X Games and extreme sports as we know them now. And he was taking the best snow athletes and filming them doing incredible things. And he had inspired me at that point in time to say, wow, that's a great career ambition, to be able to say each morning, I got the best job in the world. And I'm lucky because when I was at Sonoma State University, I got to say that every day. And then now I believe I can do the same. So today I want to share a little bit of my experience, the experience that we see on the front lines at CannaCraft. Talk about the two industries. That'll be the theme of the conference today and many of the other sessions. So maybe just to tee up some opportunities for further dialogue and to explore together. But I want to start by drawing this contrast of my experience. So on December 31st, I went to sleep. I was the dean of School of Business at Sonoma State University, where he had built the world's best wine business program. And a week later, I woke up and I was the CEO of California's largest cannabis manufacturer company. There are no words. There are no words to describe that experience. They were two separate things, separated by a small moment in time. So after 10 years of being the dean of the School of Business and Economics, for me, it was time to go on to a new adventure. And I made a conscious decision to leave that job that I loved up until the last day. And what I would share for those of you that are thinking about transitioning between industries or between jobs, and it's something I highly encourage, it's okay to leave something that you love to do. And it's okay to leave not knowing what the next step was, because what I thought I was going to do was completely different. And then it's okay sometimes to just jump in with both feet and see what happens. So when I was the dean of the School of Business and Economics, I got to meet and hang out with these people, legends of the wine industry. It's Piero Antinori over there on the left, Marchese Piero Antinori. So this was a guy, 23rd generation. If you go and visit the winery in Tuscany, there's a family tree there, and it has all these branches, and it runs floor to ceiling, even higher than this. 23rd Marchese. I think that's somewhere between Pope and King. I'm not quite sure of the Italian royalty. So this was a guy that took the Holy Sangiovese grape and had the audacity to pair it with these grapes from France, these Bordeaux varietals, and create this thing called Super Tuscan wines, which was a huge innovation at the time. Sir Peter Michael, who I think it was a year or 2 years ago, had the best wine in the world here in the North Coast, as rated by Wine Spectator. Took what he learned building a technology empire, applied that same discipline and knowledge to creating a great winery here in the North Coast. Baron Eric de Rothschild. I mean, legends of the wine industry. Oh, and also, you know the guy in the end? He looks a little different. That's Sting. Yeah, so at the New York Wine Experience, where for 2 days, you go to these things called, wine seminars. So there's no illusions about what this is. A wine seminar is 9 o'clock in the morning. There's 18 glasses in front of you, and for the next 3 hours, they pour them with liquid gold. And it's just a wonderful thing as you learn from the best people in the world about what's happening. And then in the afternoon, Sting comes up and plays Fields of Barley on an acoustic version. That's like, that was out of nowhere. And he is a winemaker with Trudy. So I was hanging around with legends. And then this happens. And I would tell you that I am still hanging around with legends. But the legends of the cannabis industry are a little bit different. To my left is Dennis Hunter. That's Sir Dennis to all of you. Dennis's story. So Dennis grows up here in Humboldt, Mendocino, goes into the cultivation side of the business at a time when it was challenging to do it. Nevertheless, he grows a very successful, no pun intended, grows a very successful cultivation business, one of the largest, which put him on the radar screen for the federales who weren't too keen on his entrepreneurial talent and decided that he should be their guest for a few years. So when you come out of that experience, it's probably time for one of those career transitions I was talking about. But he had all these contacts in the grower community. Being a consummate entrepreneur, he spins up another business supplying cultivation supplies to the industry. In that capacity, he meets the other guy, Ned Fussell, that is Lord Nedward Fussell the First, who is a decade ago or so a kid in Worcester, Massachusetts. I would tell you about both these guys is they are certifiably genius. And I'm used to hanging around with a lot of smart people at the university. These guys are among the smartest that I've met, and I'm privileged to work with them every day. So Ned is one of those entrepreneurs that's in school, ADHD, dyslexic. School's not a great place for him, at least not our kind of factory model of school. So his teacher tells him that he's an idiot, that he's never going to be able to learn anything, be successful. He is a successful entrepreneur in school, in high school, selling a little bit of the product to make some spare income. And this is the roots of our industry. It's where it started. So he goes off to Costa Rica. His teachers told him he'll never learn the language. He does learn the language. And while he's there providing supplies to tourists, a couple of them from Humboldt County say, "What are you doing in Costa Rica? It's all happening in California. You should come here." So he does that and starts out trimming. And while he's doing that, he's noticing that in those days, the trim was just kind of discarded, like, put back onto the fields or tossed over the side of the hills. He says to the people he's working for, "Mind if I have that?" And through some kind of ingenious import-export dynamics, he takes some of that and gets it over to Costa Rica, where it is prized, valuable commodity. Builds up some resources doing that, comes back to the North Coast, where he's not only learned the language, but learned some key entrepreneurial business skills, and he leverages that to build also one of the largest cultivation operations. So in that capacity, he meets Dennis. They figure out business arrangement where one becomes the largest customer of the other and decide to go into business together. A few years later, there's this kind of mysterious thing that's going around the industry, the oil. Have you heard about the oil? Have you seen about the oil? The oil is the extract from the plant that people are discovering all this waste product. You could actually extract it and put it into other product. And that's really the history of CannaCraft. It's two entrepreneurs buying an extractor, putting cannabis through it. Most people didn't know how, and they certainly didn't, and successfully not blowing themselves up, but perhaps trying along the way, spraying oil all over the place when you throw the switch for the first time. They discovered how they could use what used to be a waste product to create something that was that had value and could be made into so many different products. And not taking on an investment dollar, but building extractors, selling a couple, using a couple to be able to build their capacity. They created CannaCraft. So both industries, starting with legends, the stories are different, but there's probably a lot of similarities between the people, willing to take risks, not afraid to fail, and when they make mistakes, learning from them and getting better every single day, every single year. For all the things we might talk about today, and there'll be opportunities for how we can work together, and maybe there are concerns about the industries being competitive with one another, there's probably one truth that is most important of all, and it's the key point I'd like to make today, and that what I've learned about both these industries is that they come from one community, and it hasn't even been a year since we had those devastating wildfires here in the North Coast, in Sonoma and Napan Lake. And today, even while we're having this conference right now, there are people who are out of their homes and who are, and there are thousands of first responders and firefighters dealing with horrific blazes right now in this state. And in the toughest of times, what I saw in these industries is the best people doing the best they can, not for themselves, but for the entire community. On the left, That's George Hamill the third. In the red shirt, as soon as the fires had started and we got some semblance of the devastation, Hamill Family Wines had put on a fundraiser where they brought John Fogerty in, raised $1.2 million. And I can tell you that probably a lot of that money was from the Hamills themselves just putting in. And it's one example of many. Incidentally, he's standing next to a legend of the wine industry, Mike Benzinger and Mary, his wife. And Mike's most known for biodynamic farming in the wine industry. He's wearing a hat that if you could see it, it would say Glen Tucky Family Farms, which is his cannabis grow. And he's bringing those same biodynamic principles that he evolved in the wine industry to the cannabis industry. The picture on the right is the parking lot at CannaCraft. When the fires hit, we gave up half our building to the Red Cross so they could stage their professional operations. Over 200 people for a period of weeks were living and working with us at CannaCraft. And just think about that world where you have the Red Cross headquartered in a cannabis company. And what you would know from that time is that that wasn't the first choice for the National Red Cross for the regional one to set up operations. But again, here, we had offered, and it was a wonderful facility, and really it was a tremendous collaboration. These pictures show something else about the wine and the cannabis industry at that moment in time. And what you see and what we learn is that both vineyards and cannabis grows served as a fire break. So what we heard on the national news was disaster porn. Right? And the wine industry is devastated, catastrophic for the cannabis industry. What you see here, and with respect to the handful of wineries, and I think it was even more impactful to the cannabis industry, the grows that were destroyed. So I'm not minimizing how many people were impacted. But I want to emphasize that the agricultural plantings served as fire breaks and saved many homes. And for those people in this community who build their homes in agricultural areas next to agricultural crops and then say, we don't want cannabis or wine as agricultural crops in our communities next to our beautiful homes, they need to remember that those homes may be here today because those crops were planted next to their homes. So we get to the economics of rebuilding and how the wine and cannabis industry have and can make an impact in our community. This graph shows the value of an acre of wine grapes on the open market. The average in Sonoma County might be somewhere around $9,000, $10,000. If you've got Russian River Pinot, you might get $20,000 for that acre of wine grapes. An acre of cannabis, today's market price is somewhere around $1.7 million. That's 100x in terms of the value. So think about the path to recovery and rebuilding. If you're lucky planting a vineyard from scratch, you'll be able in 4 years to harvest from that vineyard. Maybe. Cannabis you can do right away. So I'm not saying replace all the wine grapes with cannabis vineyards. But in this community, when there were 5,000 cultivators last year, we've issued somewhere around 17-ish permits this year. First of all, there's no economic model where you take 5,000 businesses, turn them into 17, and have that work. And we're going to see the impact of that. We're feeling it a little bit now. We're going to feel it around harvest time. And who's going to feel it are the restaurants and the building supply stores and the grocery stores and everyone else in this community that's dependent on this money for so much longer. Also a caution just about graphs. Whenever you see like a squiggly line there over on the left, it means someone has kind of mucked with the data. And so full confession, I just couldn't fit it. I mean, so it goes from thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. It just doesn't fit. Now look at this. This is the footprint in this community. In Sonoma County, it's about 60,000 acres that are under vine. That little thing down there is that same cannabis thing. Tony Linegar, who's the ag commissioner, last year in preparing for the change in the industry, said it would be about, maybe someday there'd be 200 acres that could be licensed in Sonoma County for cannabis cultivation. We're nowhere near that. We're probably a tenth of that right now. The economics of the industries has to consider the value of the businesses. And if you've been following the cannabis industry, you may have heard about these companies that are running to the Canadian Stock Exchange. And what you're seeing there are crazy values. Basically 90 times top line revenue. So the business professor in me says, well, I haven't really seen anything like that before, maybe a little bit in the tech bubble. I'm asked all the time what CannaCraft is worth. I don't know how to answer that question other than to put it in context of other companies with public valuations. To me, the more important question for us is, don't you want businesses like this with that value in our community? This is an opportunity for the future, and especially a community that's been devastated by a natural disaster. We have to look at every opportunity that's in front of us. But how can we grow value in our industries? And here, wine and weed kind of work in harmony. So this is a progression of economic value. And if you have a product and it's a commodity, it has some value, but not as much value if you take it and make something with it. And so your grapes or small bud may be worth a few cents or a few dollars. Once you turn it into a bottle of wine or a vape cartridge, now you're $20, $30, whatever it might be. If you take it and then serve people that product. So if you go to John Ash and Company, where they celebrate everything, and you're served that bottle of wine, you're going to pay 2, sometimes 3 times what you'd pay for it if you bought it at the store. If you go to Harvest Consumption Lounge in San Francisco, a similar economies of scale. And here I just have to pause and say, for those of you that might stay at John Ash and Company when you're out of town, if you see a younger version of me in a cute little like bellboy uniform, give him a nice tip, because he's working really hard. So I was going to put his picture in, but he said I would embarrass him, which never stops me. All right, so the furthest progression of economic value comes when you can create a memorable and transformational experience. And so this is kind of fun. This is a picture from the Midsummer Eve Festival in Castello d'Amoroso in Napa Valley. They built a castle. They took the bricks from Italy, shipped them across the ocean, and built, I don't know, a $90 million castle, $100 million castle. And if you're going to do any experience in Sonoma County related to wine, put on your medieval costume and go there on a Midsummer Eve Festival and watch people joust and drink flagons of wine and eat big pieces of meat. It's a wonderful experience. Or you can go to Emerald Farms in Hopland and celebrate 420. You'll notice that you could probably get away with the same costume for both events, as it turns out. But what you see in both instances are people having experiences that are memorable and transformational. They're memorable if they have value after the experience ends. That is, when you reflect on them and you share the stories of that experience, they still bring value to them. And they're transformational if they change you from who you are in a moment of time to someone else, a medieval lord or lady, or perhaps a flower child living back in another era, or maybe living for the future, towards a different time when we are our more authentic selves. Either way, you can charge more for that experience, and that's the point here. Both of these industries have an opportunity to bring much value to the participants of that industry, whether they're the business participants or the consumers, because of this progression of economic value. And just kind of a shout out to Jared and his program, the Sonoma County Experience, which takes people through craft beer and wine and cannabis, all of which are headquartered here in Sonoma County. And I think we need to spend a lot of time today talking about this idea, how we share the experiences that are headquartered here in our community. Because this is an amazing idea, but it's not just restricted to the tour experience. If you own any business in this community, we need to consider how we can leverage the opportunity of these industries and create this experience economy. We will become like Silicon Valley in terms of our business prowess and power if we get this right. And because we can learn from what's been done in the past, we don't have to build a whole bunch of strip malls and business parks to do it. In fact, it would detract from the experience. So how do we sell this experience? Wine has a longer history of doing this. I mean, it starts by creating a lore around the legends, like I was talking about earlier, and then you build a language and you create lessons. So in wine, in structured wine tasting, you're focusing on taste and touch and smell and mouthfeel. And the more you learn about wine, the less you feel like you know, because there's so much that you can experience from it. And so wine becomes this mystery, something that you want to keep exploring, keep trying to do more, keep learning more. Cannabis hasn't quite learned this yet. So when you go and buy cannabis, many people will ask, or your bud tender will tell you, well, here's the one with the highest THC. The equivalency in wine would be selling this product, right? So how many people want to drink Everclear? Now, I'll harken back to those teenagers in a basement in Connecticut, and I'm not going to say I didn't try it, but I don't need to do that anymore. And so what you see now actually is the cannabis industry growing up a little bit more. As we create a personalized approach to working with our customers, a customer of one. So what you see on the left is our line of Absolute Xtract cartridges, and it's a strain for every occasion. It's a lifestyle brand, and we try to pair the brand with the needs of the person. On the right is a terpene card, which shows you how the different strains have different effects, and the more we learn about cannabis, the more we learn how to individualize the experience so people can have exactly the experience they need at the moment that they're looking for it. So I believe there's a lot of work to be done here, and frankly, we're just beginning to do the research that will let us know exactly how we can share the cannabis experience and make it personalized for each customer. But there's something here for wine to learn from cannabis. So wine also has more than alcohol in it. It has the same terpenes and other flavonoids and essential elements that are part of the grape. But we don't really talk about the effect of wine at all. We talk about the taste and the smell. But different wines likely also have different effects. A little bit of research has been done on the different effects of alcohol. And if you think about yourself personally, how you feel after a glass of champagne is different than how you feel after a glass of wine or a shot of whiskey, or especially a shot of tequila. Right? We know these things affect us differently. So I think there's something here for wine to learn from cannabis, and that is sort of effect-based marketing, how the wine makes us feel. And think about what varietals, how we could talk about varietals differently if we knew how they impact us. And I'd be happy to sit down with people and sample a bunch of different wines, especially your nice ones, and see what the experience is. And one of the things I learned in CannaCraft is R&D is an immersive experience. You have to try what's there to understand how it works. Another thing both industries seem to be engaged with is innovation. So in a program in the fall, kudos to George, who really got out ahead of this, and Wine Industry Network creates these Winnovation Awards. And what you see, these are last year's award winners, and they're doing things like disintermediating distribution by developing technology platforms, things that they can do in soil analysis or sorting technology. And I think one of the biggest opportunities for collaboration between wine and cannabis is in innovations. Which brings me to a recent one for us at CannaCraft. And I hope you've had a chance to hear about hi-fi hops. It's over there on the table in the can. So this began from a collaboration last year. Jeremy Marshall, the brew monster at Lagunitas, was sitting with a couple of our formulation team going, what would it be like to take our hops and run them through your CO2 supercritical extractor? And could we extract the hop terpenes out? And it turns out you can. And if you put them into a vape cartridge, what you have is a product that when you vape it, tastes like beer. Similarly, you can take our cannabis terpenes and put them into a beer, and there you have a product that has some of the associated effects of those terpenes when you drink the alcohol. To be clear, no THC was in that product. So there was nothing, if you will, federally illegal about that. Of course, the government didn't see it that way, and about 3 weeks later that they decided that we shouldn't, or Lagunitas shouldn't be selling that product. And so you can't find supercritical beer anymore. You can find the supercritical vape cartridges, and were you to pair them with a beer, I would tell you it's a very nice experience. But that led to further conversations about what you could do together, and what we just released to the market on Monday. And I'm sorry, it's in such short supply. There's 6 stores in the state where you can get it right now, and we're just working through some of the testing lab stranglehold on the industry to get more product out. It'll be available everywhere soon. But it is delicious. It's a sparkling hop water. In Prohibition, they had hop tonics, and it's a sparkling water that's flavored like hop. Jeremy's a master at his craft, and so this hop water tastes and feels like a beer. It's got all that mouthfulness and the wonderful taste that you like in an IPA without any of the weight. So as you become my age and kind of it's the sort of last of the baby boomer generation, those heavy IPAs, you don't feel so great the next day, and you can't have as many of them. These things are amazing. You get all that mouthfeel, and then the effect that you want. There's a high test version and a CBD THC paired version, and I just think we're going to see a lot of new innovations. In fact, since it's appropriate for this conference, now you're not allowed to put THC in wine and sell it commercially right now, and so that's not happening. But an individual making wine in his or her own home might be able to experiment with the same proprietary emulsion that you might use to infuse a hop water and see what it would taste like if you put it into a bottle of wine. And I think eventually we'll be exploring what it is we're able to do there. So you won't find this on the shelf. But if you come to my house for dinner, you just might want to ask what's in the wine before you drink it. So I'm unfortunately running out of time here. I want to be respectful to the time been allotted. So I'm gonna skip ahead to a couple of slides here at the end, or maybe not. Yeah, that's the one I wanted. So here's where things are different between the two, and I think this is worth exploring today as well. In the era of us talking about the recreational use of cannabis, we've seen a huge sales spike in our medicinal brand, Care by Design. And the reason for that is primarily baby boomers and active lifestyle folks now feel more comfortable coming to a dispensary in this era. But if you're in that group, you likely have joint pain, maybe stress, anxiety, or trouble sleeping. And while cannabis also seems to have effects, very positive and beneficial health effects for autism, Parkinson's, epilepsy, post-traumatic stress disorder, even cancer, there's a lot of research that needs to be done there. I don't think we need to do too much more research to understand that cannabis is beneficial for joint pain, anxiety release, stress relief, even sleeping. And so we've seen this incredible surge of interest in cannabis as medicine, which kind of brings me to the end here, and that is why jump from one industry to another. My personal story is that while I was dean at the end there, I was writing a book on work-life alignment, and it was really an existential exploration of what really matters. And for me, learning is what really matters. Seeking out new adventures and making a difference. And I was privileged to be able to be in the education industry and make a difference to many students. And now I'm in the cannabis industry. And I think from my experience in the wine industry and my experience in cannabis, that these industries share a common heritage in making a difference. If you think about a quadruple bottom line of prosperity, because you need kind of the economic base to make it work, but also people. Each product, each industry is about bringing people together. And also the planet, because the sustainability ethic runs deep in both industries. And for me, the fourth P is progress. Both industries are learning industries. And the fact that you're all here today lets me understand that you're interested in learning. And I really look forward to spending the rest of the day with you exploring what we can do together in both these industries. Thank you so much for your time this morning.